Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that Keir Starmer's resigned as Prime Minister. The champagne's flowing, there's dancing in the streets. Finally, the nightmare's over, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Because the people most desperate to get rid of him aren't concerned citizens who've had enough of broken promises and catastrophic policy. They're the hard left who think his problem is that he's not extreme enough. Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where today we're diving into the absolutely bonkers reality that even Labour wants Starmer out, but not because he's terrible at his job, which he demonstrably is, but because they think he's not left-wing enough. But before we proceed, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more updates on this channel. Thank you. This is the political equivalent of the Titanic sinking and passengers complaining that the captain didn't steer into the iceberg hard enough. Strap in, because this one's wild. Let's start with the brutal facts. Keir Starmer is now the most unpopular prime minister in history. Not just unpopular, not just struggling, the most unpopular ever recorded. Just 14% of Britons say they'd vote Labour if there was an election tomorrow. 14%. That's not a political party, that's a margin of error with delusions of grandeur. Think about what that means. He won a landslide majority just months ago with voters holding their noses and choosing Labour because the Conservatives were a complete shambles. Now, given another chance, those same voters would obliterate him at the ballot box. That's not just buyer's remorse, that's buyer's full-blown regret spiral. Why is he so unpopular? Where do we even start? He lacks basic leadership skills, a clear vision, and the ability to inspire people or win them to his side. He's got no human skills, no oratorical ability, no wit, charisma, or charm. Now, allegedly, friends claim he's pleasant enough in private, which is the political equivalent of saying someone has a nice personality when you can't think of anything else complimentary. But here's the kicker. He lies repeatedly, constantly. When challenged, he'll say whatever he thinks he can get away with. And even when caught out red-handed, he insists it's all true and blunders on like nothing happened. It's shamelessness elevated to an art form. His policies are an absolute disaster parade. We've had the Chagos sellout, handing over strategic territory to a Chinese ally while paying them billions for the privilege. There's the winter fuel payment fiasco, stripping support from pensioners while claiming fiscal responsibility. The tax raid on farmers and family firms that's threatening to destroy generational businesses. The complete failure to stop small boat crossings, despite promising he'd smash the gangs. And the foot-dragging over the grooming gangs inquiry, which is one of the most shameful examples of political cowardice in recent memory. That's just the highlights reel. There's plenty more where that came from. After 2 horrible budgets, the economy has flatlined. Not growing slowly, not struggling a bit, completely flatlined. The cost of living crisis that was supposed to be solved by getting Labour into power is still raging. Unemployment's rising, consumer confidence is shot, business investment is stalling. Voters would absolutely boot him out tomorrow if they could, except they can't because we're stuck with him for another 3 years or so. That's the joy of the British system. You get one chance to vote, then you're locked in regardless of how catastrophically things go wrong. Now here's where it gets properly fascinating. Labour politicians have had enough too. Wes Streeting, the health secretary who's made a name for himself by occasionally saying sensible things, is circling. Angela Rayner, well, she was circling until her council tax problems forced her resignation, but the ambition's still there. Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, is positioning himself as the reasonable alternative who could win back voters. These aren't opposition figures criticizing from the sidelines. These are Labour insiders who've clearly decided Starmer's a liability and they could do better. Outside the party, the left's in full revolt. Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn have broken away to set up Your Party, which is such a magnificently terrible name, it almost deserves respect for its sheer lack of imagination. It's like naming your band The Band or your restaurant The Restaurant. The Greens, led by Zach Polanski, are heading towards political la-la land with policies that make Jeremy Corbyn look moderate. And the unions, Labour's traditional power base and funding source, are also turning on Starmer. Unite, led by Sharon Graham, is threatening to break ties entirely, which would be both a financial and symbolic disaster for Labour. So, everyone's fed up with Starmer. Labour MPs, union bosses, left-wing activists, voters, pretty much anyone who's paying attention thinks he's failing. You'd assume they're all upset about the same things: the broken promises, the policy disasters, the lies, the sheer incompetence. You'd be wrong, because while you and I might loathe Starmer for presenting himself as a moderate Tony Blair-like figure to win power, then quickly revealing his true hard-left colors, that's not why the left hate him. Oh no, the real reason is absolutely staggering. They think Starmer's government is failing because it isn't left-wing enough. Let that sink in for a moment. They've watched him implement tax rises, expand government spending, maintain high immigration levels, and generally pursue center-left policies that have tanked the economy and public confidence. Their diagnosis isn't that he's gone too left, it's that he hasn't gone far enough. Incredibly, they want Labour to tax more, spend more, and borrow more. Instead of stronger border controls, which voters are crying out for, they want more immigration and more asylum seekers. Instead of tackling grooming gangs, one of the most horrific scandals in modern British history, they want to scrap the inquiry entirely and bury the whole subject. It's genuinely insane. This is the political equivalent of being in a car that's careening towards a cliff and deciding the solution is to press the accelerator harder. The economy struggling? Tax businesses more. Public services are inefficient? Throw more money at them without any reform. Immigration is a political flashpoint? Open the borders wider. Grooming gangs inquiry is uncomfortable? Shut it down because addressing it might upset certain communities or feed into narratives the left doesn't like. It's ideology completely divorced from reality. Electoral suicide dressed up as principle. The grooming gang's position is particularly revealing and disturbing. We're talking about systematic, industrial-scale child abuse that was ignored for years by authorities terrified of being called racist. Thousands of victims, dozens of towns, a complete failure of safeguarding and law enforcement. The inquiry that's finally happening, years late to off, is essential for justice and preventing future abuse. But sections of the left want it scrapped because they're more concerned about potential backlash against certain communities than they are about the victims. That's not progressive politics, that's moral cowardice dressed up as anti-racism. It's putting ideology and political calculation above the safety and justice for vulnerable children. It's indefensible. The immigration position is equally divorced from reality. Immigration is one of the top issues for voters. Legal immigration reached record highs under the Conservatives. Illegal channel crossings have continued under Labour despite promising to stop them, and public concern is at peak fever. The solution, according to the hard left, is to embrace even more immigration and asylum seekers, because borders are inherently racist or something. Never mind what voters want, never mind integration challenges, never mind pressure on housing and public services, just open the doors wider and anyone who objects is a bigot. It's a position that guarantees electoral annihilation, but apparently principle matters more than power to these people. The economic position is perhaps the most immediately destructive. We've already had 2 budgets that raise taxes significantly, particularly on businesses, farmers, and family firms. The result has been stagnant growth, rising unemployment, and cratering business confidence. Companies are scaling back investment, some are relocating abroad, others are just holding on and hoping things improve. The left's response is that we need to tax and spend even more, as if the problem with the current approach is insufficient ambition rather than fundamental economic illiteracy. It's like watching someone repeatedly bang their head against a wall and concluding they're just not hitting it hard enough. Now here's where the real danger lies. Voters can't boot out Starmer because we don't have an election for years, but a coalition of Labour cabinet careerists who fancy their chances at the top, posturing backbench MPs who want to make themselves for names themselves, unhinged activists who've never met a moderate position they didn't hate, militant unions with the power to cause economic chaos, Corbynites who never accepted defeat. Islamists who want to reshape British politics around identity grievances, and even the Lib Dems who will support anything that makes them feel relevant are all pushing to replace Starmer with something even more extreme. Think about that coalition for a second. These aren't fringe figures shouting into the void. These are people with power, money, organizational capacity, and political platforms. Cabinet ministers who control departments, union bosses who control funding and can organize strikes, MPs who can vote down legislation or launch leadership challenges, activists who can mobilize protests and shape narratives. This isn't a powerless rabble. It's a genuine political force that could conceivably remove Starmer and replace him with someone even worse. Even if Starmer survives, and he probably will in the short term because Labour MPs don't want another leadership crisis so soon after winning, the pressure from this coalition will force him even further